Chapter 1901. Different systems, different rewards. Distracted from the conversation by the rewards, one of the rangers went and picked up a bow, then stared at it with what seemed to be a mix of horror and confusion. This is an epic item, but not like anything that I've seen before. Come and inspect the actual status of the items, he insisted. Carl checked the item, and then he was confused as well. Aren't those the level of bonuses that are always on items? The levels, sure. But what are these bonuses? Where is the added monster damage, the agility bonus, the ranger modifier? It's got nature element damage bonus, crippling wounds, skill bonus to slow the target, and increased attack speed. That's no worse than usual. In fact, it's extra useful because you're all Elven Rangers and you use nature element damage skills. They were clearly at an impasse, so Ray transformed to mediate. I think that they only ever get boring skills on their items, but since we were here, they got things that they didn't expect, and it's messing up their ability to stack bonuses to get just what they wanted. Oh, good point. Nothing is worse than getting a good bonus that's not what you need. Wait, when gear drops in a dungeon, you get all sorts of modifiers? Not just the ones that are for your class. Carl nodded. Everyone can equip every bonus. It's just a matter of whether you have a skill that can actually make good use of it. Actually, let me correct that. Some bonuses aren't for everyone. Some are class-specific, and then there are items that have a specific skill. For example, I could make a sword with Earthquake on it, and most of you would not be able to use the skill, even if you had the sword. Because that's not a skill that rangers can use. Now the elves looked truly confused. How does that even work? Every item type has specific bonuses. The craftsmen of the elves all agree. Perhaps it's a system-based difference? Like the items that we make aren't designed for their system, so they have very different bonuses? That would explain the confusion, Ray suggested. First, hello. Might I ask who you are? Ray laughed. Lady Ray Bloodbath. I've been here the whole time, just in spider form. This transformation makes it easier to interact with others, so I use it fairly often. The explanation seemed to have shaken the very foundation of everything that the elves knew about the world. Monsters were monsters. Even if they were intelligent ones like dragons, they were what they were. They didn't learn skills to turn themselves into humanoids, they used the skills that they were born with. If monsters could just learn new skills, how would anyone else survive? Isn't this fun? We're all learning new things. Kara cheered, twirling a shining silver necklace around her finger. Hey, how did you get that? Badger, remember. I'll trade you for it. One shiny object. She held out another silver necklace, and the man stared at her, baffled by the offer to trade. What she had in her other hand was a rare grade necklace with an astounding amount of mana regeneration on it, but what she had taken was a simple elven mithril necklace that the warrior had intended to give to his girlfriend as a proposal gift. But more concerningly, the necklace that Kara was offering had his family crest on it.
How?
He repeated. See, elves live such a long time, and they still don't understand the basics. I want your shiny thing, and I will offer you a shiny thing in exchange. We call this the barter system, equivalent exchange. The other elves laughed at the simple explanation, as it completely ignored everything that the man was actually trying to understand. No. How did you know my family crest?
Oh, that.
You've got it on your shirt. Plus, it's on this pen that I found somewhere. The warrior sighed and held out his hand to get his pen back. But Kara handed him both the pen and the necklace. Good to do business with you. Well, it would work as an heirloom item to propose with. It did have the family crest on it, even if it was much more expensive than he could normally afford to give away. Hey, I got a cupcake. Ray and Carl chuckled, while Kara looked so innocent that every elf in the team immediately knew that she had rifled through the man's pockets and left him the snack for reasons unknown. At least, unknown to him. Well, if we've finished up here, I suppose that we can exit the dungeon and finish our shopping trip. The elves make all sorts of lovely stuff, and I should collect some before I head home. Mr. Carl, you may wish to transform back into the fox form you used when you arrived. The appearance of a Tengu within the city would be problematic. Also, about your friends. Ray laughed at the thought of the elves' reaction to her. I will retreat to my space, so I don't scare the locals. If there are children of the spider goddess around later, I might come out to say hello, but I suspect that there won't be any in town. No matter where we go, the dark elves, the sea elves, and the forest elves rarely get along. Kara was already in humanoid form, and her badger ears wouldn't attract too much attention in the town, as long as people didn't realize that she was an actual badger. However, if they realized that Carl had brought an actual chaos badger into the village, there was no telling what might happen. And even the group members were giving him subtle hints that Kara should be left behind for a shopping trip. Possibly because they realized that she had checked all their pockets during the boss fight. That might have something to do with it. Chapter 1902. A bit of shopping. Will you be making this dungeon part of your regular rotation? The Berserker asked as they exited the dungeon. Kara answered on Carl's behalf. It's a fair trip from home, so I'm not certain how often I will come back to play here. However, it was a lot of fun, so I might bring a team and see what sort of scaling we get. Dungeons that scale to the capabilities of the team entering them are so much more fun than the ones that are the same difficulty every time. Well, that's always a consideration. A long trip to do a dungeon run is moderately inconvenient, given the limitations on transportation magic. However, now that we know the tricks to grouping with you, I suspect that we can prepare a group to keep the dungeon just slightly under supreme rank to maximize clearance speed and minimize difficulty. Kara shrugged. The dungeon would give her a random modifier on danger, and it wouldn't always be a 1% buff in the entertainment value. If you'd like an escort around town, I have plenty of time this afternoon. You can pick up a trinket for Carl's wife, and perhaps something for the Lady Ray? We have a wide variety of options here, and not all of them are elven in origin. Kara took the Berserker's hand and pointed into the market. All right, off we go. Now, the first thing that we need to get is a gift for the Dana Mage, so that she doesn't get mad at me when we get back. Are you married? The Berserker shook his head. Oh, then you might not know yet. But keeping women happy is mostly a matter of distraction. You see, if we give her a gift when we get back, she will be mad at Carl for wandering off on an adventure without her, but she will totally forget that it was me who brought him here. The elves laughed at the badger's clearly devious train of thought. Throwing Carl under the wagon just to keep her own innocent act up. Shameless. How did you decide to come here anyhow? Oh, there was an untethered pocket dimension that collided with our guild house. We relocated it to this star system and stabilized it out there somewhere. Now, it shouldn't run into anyone, and those annoying old high elves and their slaves won't be our problem anymore. In the crowd, dozens of heads discreetly turned their way. They thought that they could just dump a bunch of slavers here like nothing, just because they were also a form of elf? Oh no, that was not how it worked at all. There were more than a few elves here who had suffered in the past, and they would happily gather a posse and go discuss the finer points of civilized behavior with the residents of that pocket dimension as soon as they found it. Well, that's one option. Still, the luck that it would take to not only end up here simply because there were elves, and to have a Titan clan dungeon when you've got a World Dragon avatar that will bump up the difficulty and loot tables for it. That's pretty impressive. Kara preened with pride. Of course I'm lucky. What sort of badger would I be if my luck was bad? Ooh, follow me over here. I think that might be another good gift for our guild members. We've got vegetarians at home, and I don't smell any cream in your ice cream. The Berserker chuckled as he let Kara lead him around by the hand like an excited child, though he was old enough to be her grandfather in human years. At 300, he was still relatively young for an elven warrior. But in human years, he was ancient, and the badger's aura didn't feel like she had lived a long life. It was difficult to tell with some beasts, as they always felt rather young. But Kara had excited pubescent energy. While it was possible that she was actually much older, as she was an immortal beast, nobody would believe that without being provided solid evidence to the contrary. Carl knew that Lotus had recipes to make ice cream without milk. There was no way that she didn't have at least 3. But she probably didn't have any immortal rank elven recipes for it. And if Kara brought her back some sweet treats, the cleric would be overjoyed. You know, if you've got a foodie in the group, we sell cookbooks, the Berserker noted, with a gesture toward a bookstore. It's a good thing that we didn't bring Remy along. If she found out about a bookstore, We'd never get out of here before dark. Carl, be a dear and go look at paper. I need ice cream. Spending time with the kids at the new home merchant clan's school was definitely influencing Kara. Or was it the ladies of the tiny world? Either way, she didn't used to be the one with a sweet tooth. Kara dragged the berserker into the ice cream parlor, while one of the mages from the group accompanied Carl to the bookstore. If I don't accompany you, there is a good chance you'll never get out either. The librarians can be a bit scary. Worse than the blue dragons? The mage nodded solemnly. They've been corrupted by questionable fae reading material and too many night shifts alone in the romance section. Letting an unaccompanied fox enter the bookstore is just begging for trouble. Tion was about to offer to protect Carl from the scary women when he realized that he would also be in danger. Perhaps even more of it, since he was smaller and fluffier. The young elven woman behind the counter immediately sat bolt upright as a gentle chiming bell announced Carl's arrival to the shop. Her eyes were glued to his ears, and Carl gave her a warm smile. Good day, librarian. Do you happen to have cookbooks? Perhaps something suitable to home cooking for a large family? The mage behind him sighed. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? Carl winked at him and let just a hint of fox charm slip before he turned back. If Opal had taught him anything, it was that giving a romance addict the wrong idea was the best way to keep their minds working. Chapter 1903. Tease the Librarian. The librarian blushed to the tips of her elongated ears as thoughts spun through her mind, but she was on her feet and racing over to Carl in the surprisingly large shop. Of course. We have entire sections dedicated to both divine and non-magical cooking. Which one were you looking for? Divine cooking sounds wonderful. What we normally use is called mystic cooking, but it should be similar enough that it's compatible. It's certainly far superior to non-magical cooking. Oh, I know what you mean. It's the Introduction to Divine Cooking. The apprentice-level book is called Mystic Cooking. In that case, I have just what you need. We have the journeyman-level books for divine cooking here, since you already have the apprentice level. Then we can get you set up with just the right cookbooks. How many are you cooking for? Carl thought about it. Well, it would be 10 of us at the minimum, and then possibly another 200 if we include the dragons from the orphanage, the nature priestesses who live by the lake, and the hatchlings. The librarian's mind was clearly running over time, trying to understand what sort of harem Carl had going on at home. A minimum of 10 suggested that he had a wife and 8 children waiting for him at home. But there were also nature priestesses involved? Was he a farmer? Ooh, a whole farm full of lovely, lusty ladies. Yes, that was something she could see a divine fox doing. A whole harem of hippie forest elven priestesses and a divine fox. The librarian's mind had clearly wandered off, and she had stopped leading them to the book section. So, the elf accompanying Carl took them both to the shoulder and guided them towards the cooking section. He was a mage and quite familiar with the bookstore itself, so he knew what they should be looking for. Librarian, snap out of it. We're here. Right, sorry. I'm weak to fox charm. Now, this is the skill book for divine cooking. You'll need that to start. And then we've got 3 essentials from Elder Sandra. They are event catering essentials, home-style dining with royals, and comfort food of the myriad races. That last one is a great one for use at home, as she includes comfort food recipes from 20 different cultures into a single book, as well as ways to adapt them to be more palatable to elves and beastkin. Some do prefer more meat, or none at all. Carl nodded. Many of the priestesses simply don't like to eat the meat. But that's fine. We can accommodate them all. In fact, I have dedicated a large portion of a pocket dimension to growing specialty crops for just that reason. The mage covered his face and shook his head. You're definitely doing this on purpose. Stop teasing the librarian and pick out the cookbooks. Carl laughed, and the librarian giggled as she realized the fox was playing up the effect he had on her for his own personal entertainment. Most divine foxes tended to go for the Ice King personality, to avoid giving people the wrong impression. But not Carl. He actually acted like a fox in front of people, teasing them and playing pranks. That was a rare thing for his species, and she wondered just how much power he had. Even here in the Elven lands, there was still a very real chance that someone with power would try to capture him and keep him for nefarious purposes. Tell me, does your guild have a powerful backing? It's rare to see a divine fox acting so unreservedly, she asked carefully. Carl laughed. Even without that, I don't have much to fear. Avatars of the world dragon are not easy to capture. But yes, the Darklight host is a divine guild, with demigods among our ranks. Oh, that's solid backup. I was concerned that some Supreme might get ideas about keeping a pet fox. Carl winked and ran a finger up her neck to the tip of her chin, forcing the shorter elf to look up at him as he smiled and let Fox charm slip a little. Oh, they're not ready for that. My wife is a divine fox, and I'm not sure that even I'm fully capable of such a feat. The librarian made a hysterical noise that Tion associated with Opal when she got a super exciting new idea, and Carl released the librarian and retracted his aura. Then his attention was pulled to the door, where a group of men in shining armor were standing. They all looked frozen in shock, as if they had seen something that they couldn't comprehend. Now, I suppose I should purchase those books and head back home. It's been a pleasure to meet you, librarian. The mage sighed. See, this is precisely what she was worried about. You're not going to get to finish your shopping because being an unaccompanied fox in public has attracted attention. I suspect that one of the nobles is strongly requesting your presence. Is that so? Carl asked the armored men at the door. The Lady Silverwood requests your presence for a private dinner. The soldier agreed. Please inform that Lady Silverwood that I have a soul-bonded mate, and such an intimate dinner with another woman would not be appropriate. The man placed his hand on his sword. I'm afraid that I must insist. Carl sighed and turned to speak casually to the mage. You know, the last time this happened, they were trying to take my wife. And how did that end? With 4 clans annihilated, 2 supreme-ranked clan leaders dead, and a blood stripe for a peak immortal challenge victory added to my guild tabard. The guards paused, while the mage looked shocked. Pardon? I don't think that I heard that right. Carl laughed. When the Darklight host raises the war banner, things tend to spiral out of control in rapid fashion. Chapter 1904, Compromise. The guards who had been sent to invite Carl for dinner were sending a flurry of messages back to their mistress. She was a supreme-ranked family head, but she was a druid, and not suitable to a challenge battle. Trying to abduct a duelist who could take out a peak immortal in single combat would cause so much damage to their noble house that they might very well lose their third-place position within the city. Even if he was a divine fox, the cost might be too high. Perhaps a dinner in a public space? One of them offered. Carl nodded. I have no objections to that. However, I will inform her that I will be chaperoned. My wife trusts me, but it is better not to create unnecessary misunderstandings. I just finished a dungeon run with this fine gentleman, so he can fill the role. The mage gave him a look that spoke volumes, and Carl whispered a message to him. What's the harm? You get a high-end free dinner out of it. They won't try anything in public, or I'll set the badger loose on them. The mage chuckled at the thought of Carl loose within an elven royal restaurant. The amount of priceless magic inside such a building that would appeal to a badger would cause losses that would cripple a lesser noble family. In his mind, Dana rolled her eyes. You are just enjoying causing trouble too much. I'm going to have to limit the amount of influence that Kara has on you. Perhaps we can find you an Order Element sister to keep the effect under control? Ooh, bring back a pet elf. Opal cheered. For 1, no. For 2, that's not an Order-aligned sister. How did it even come to this? Is this a side effect of the world dragon's luck? The least likely events are actually the most likely to happen to you? How could you attract the attention of high nobility just by walking from the dungeon to the bookstore? Carl shrugged. No idea, but it happens all the time. It keeps life interesting. Do you want to come to dinner? Carl asked Dana, before the guards could finalize the details with their mistress.
No.
You're going to cause an incident, and I am busy trying to teach Serpahina how to use her dragonfire to make a nest just the right temperature. Carl laughed at her annoyance and raised enthusiasm for the prospect of a fight. All right, our mistress has agreed to a location. If the mage can bring you appropriately dressed to the Ancient Oak restaurant in 2 hours, we'll be waiting. Carl nodded politely. Oh, that is wonderful. Just enough time to finish our shopping. Now, I should check out with these cookbooks, and then we can hit a clothing shop and somewhere with perfume for my wife, and perhaps a jeweler. In the ice cream shop, Kara winked at her companions. It looks like they did the dumb thing and tried to snatch Carl, just like you guessed. The next round is on me. We've got 2 hours before the dinner. The other elves laughed as they learned that they had won a bet with the badger. Only did they really win? They strongly suspected that Kara only bet against that outcome so that she had an excuse to stay here for a second round of coffee and ice cream, as she hadn't gotten to try all the flavors. They simply didn't understand that Kara never made a bet that she had a chance of losing. No matter how this one had ended, she got what she wanted, since their bet was on who paid for the next round, and she only wanted more ice cream. They had so much money stored in Carl's system interface that she could just pay for anything that she wanted, whenever she found it. A few ice cream bowls for her new friends was not even close to being a financial hardship when they could make currency that the locals would accept. That had to be one of the best system features, next to the loot storage space. While they ordered, Carl took the mage to a clothing shop. They were followed by the whole entourage of guards, who were making certain that they didn't try to make a run for it in the 2 hours before the dinner. Are you seriously going to drag me along to a dinner at the Ancient Oak? That place isn't somewhere the people like me can casually enter. It's 1,000,000 gold system coins a year for the membership to just step foot in the place, and more if you want a private room for your dinners. I'm not even elven nobility, much less a royal lineage. It's like you suggested bringing a feral woodland elf in with you. Carl smiled, and the mage gave him a pleading look. Please don't. I know that look. It's the look of a madman who just got a brilliant idea. But seriously, do not bring a feral elf into the restaurant. You'll get us all beaten and thrown out. What about a forest trickster? The mage actually laughed at that. Oh, that would be even worse in so many glorious ways. By the time that they realized what had happened and managed to catch and stop her, it would be worse than bringing the badger. Fine, no surprise guests. But we need to go find proper clothing. Now, let's pick a good clothing place. How about that one? It looks like it sells high-quality items that aren't silk. I have a supplier for silk clothing, and she doesn't like it if I use other silk. Right, the Lady Ray. This place should be fine. That's an elven dreamcloth shop. It's made from plant fibers and imbued with magic. The price isn't cheap, but if you have items to trade, that should be fine. Carl definitely had items he could trade. Plus, it was just one outfit. It couldn't be that expensive. Rare grade should be fine for a short notice visit. The style was the important part, and he would use the accessories to show off instead. Chapter 1905. Formal Wear. The response of the staff in the clothing shop was a bit more muted than the response of the librarian had been, but Carl could see that every eye in the room was still tracking him as he walked past the ladies' fashion to the men's section in the back. Elven fashion is a bit odd, but I suppose it would be best if I fit in, right? I don't know what they usually wear around here to meet with wealthy people, but I suspect that my usual outfits made of spider silk might not be the right option. The shop staff laughed, assuming that Carl was joking, until they got close and realized that he really was wearing robes made of demonic spider silk. How he had agreed to that, when foxes were notoriously picky about everything, was a mystery. But Dreamcloth was pleasant to every species. Welcome, Lord Customer. Welcome, Magus. Is there something in particular that we can help you with? Carl smiled at the young shopkeeper. Yes, we have been invited to the Ancient Oak restaurant for dinner, and I was hoping to have something suitable to local fashion for the event. Do you have something suitable? I'm not the best versed in elven fashion sensibilities. Do you know many elves? I can smell that you're not local. You smell like another planet. Carl nodded. I do, but they're either forest elven nature priestesses or dark elves. Neither of those helps me in this situation. Though, the dark elves would be fine with what I'm wearing for a formal occasion. The shopkeeper nodded. Epic-grade immortal spider silk was absolutely acceptable for any formal occasion with the dark elves. Well, if that's what you're used to, we have some wonderful options here. This style of robe is traditional for mages and other magic users. Might I ask what your specialty is? I'm a pet sitter, or a beast master, if that is more familiar to you. The elf frowned. You're a ranger? The mage burst out laughing. No, not at all. He has bonded beasts like a ranger, but they're immortal beasts, proper monsters. I think that giving him mage-type fashion would be best. He's not a melee warrior sort for certain. Interesting. So, elven formal wear is separated by your skills. Indeed. Elves tend to hyper-focus on certain skills for centuries at a time, so they build their entire wardrobe to suit that task. It's just more convenient if all your clothes suit everything that you're planning to do. If you're not fighting in melee combat, then these are lovely. Or would you prefer something more like the bards? Slightly seductive and flamboyant. Carl winked at her, and the shopkeeper blushed while the mage sighed. Kindly do not start another incident. We've still got bodyguards from the last one. I'm sure it's fine. You have no idea how hard Fox Charm hits people when your soul power is that high. The average fox isn't bad, but whatever method you use has made your soul power incredibly high, and even restrained your aura is affecting everyone around you. Carl focused for a second, and then let a bit of his own aura slip to counteract Fox Charm. No, that's not better at all, the shopkeeper shouted, then covered her mouth. Oh, so she's into the dark and dangerous sort. Ray noted. I really should have stayed disguised as a tengu or a cat or something. You can transform? Carl nodded. I can pick from quite a few options, actually. The issue is most of them are either demonic in nature or unsuitable for indoor usage. I don't think that the shop would hold up well to a world dragon or a soul fire elemental. Yeah, that would be a disaster. The dream-weaving talent imbues spiritual energy into the clothing. Soul fire would destroy the entire shop, even if it didn't burn the cloth. But if you would like to test fashion, we can have you transform and see if the outfits would suit your other forms. Carl nodded and shifted to his customary snow tiger form, the one that everyone called a cat demon. Oh, now that is unexpected from a fox. Are all your forms designed to be characters in a romance novel? Carl frowned. My other one that works is human like this. He shifted again, and everyone gave him strange looks. That's not human. Like, it's human-shaped, but I don't think that anyone would mistake that for an actual human. Damn, people are just too polite. I thought that it was pretty good, other than the eyes. What Carl didn't know was that elves didn't go entirely by external appearance, but by aura, pheromones, and magical presence. Carl's human form had most of the appearance, but none of the other parts matched anymore, thanks to the many skills that had changed his constitution. Plus, the auras of the beasts merged with his when he wasn't hiding his true nature, and that definitely didn't feel human. Even when he was a commander, people noticed that much. All right, for the event, I suggest that you go as a fox. The cat would be the next option, but the cat demons have an unsavory reputation. It might not make your life easier for people to see you that way, instead of as a nine-tailed fox. We will give you a few options to pick from, and you can pick one for the evening. I recommend the white and gold, to go with your white fur. She held up an elegant elven robe, and Carl carefully took it from her hands, then equipped it. The clerk gasped, but Carl shrugged. If I put it on, it's mine. I'll buy everything that I agree to try on. Just keep notes. I think that she's wondering how you put on clothes without changing. Oh, that part. It's a system function. Very convenient. The mage could already feel the headache building. Nothing that Carl did made any sort of sense, and he was afraid to tell the strange fox that it was customary to bring a gift for the host at such a formal event. The gods only knew what he would do. Chapter 1906. How to Get Dreamcloth. The clothing shop employees brought over 3 other outfits, less formal and more flashy than the first set of robes. These are the customary noble outfits for bards, businessmen, and rogues. If you would like to try them, I suspect that they would all suit you. Carl nodded and cycled through the outfits, finishing with the tight pants, half-button silk shirt, and full-length coat of the bard outfit. It had a very ultra-wealthy playboy feel to it, and he knew that he was going to get good use out of this one later. But he probably shouldn't wear it in public around the elves. All right, that's 4 outfits for me. That's pretty good, and I should be set for the evening. Now, we need to do a bit of shopping for the lovely ladies at home. Since they can equip them and make them fit perfectly, there is no need to get their measurements right. However, if we want to have someone model them, I can create a construct. A construct. A solid illusion. If I make an illusionary copy of my wife, we can see what will look best on her. She'll have to try the items on manually, but we've still got a bit of time, I think. Not too much. I did want to see the city a little and do some other shopping. But we simply can't leave without finding her a few outfits. And some for Ray to design new clothing lines around. But that was a given, as Dana would likely never actually wear this Dreamcloth fashion unless Ray couldn't find a way to replicate it. I should have asked the librarian if she had a Dreamcloth weaving skill book in there. Lady Ray would love to have a copy, and if she was unable to use it, I bet that my friend Opal could. The elves scoffed at the idea. It isn't a skill that just anyone could use. It takes powerful Fey lineage, purified mana, and incredible skill with dream-related magic. Actually, I think that's perfect. Opal is a forest trickster, with a strong affinity for the illusionary domain ability and an understanding of mana control. A forest trickster responsible enough to make Dreamcloth? Carl thought about that, and then shrugged. If she thought that it would make authentic fashion for some of her dramas, I can see her putting in the work. She is all about the perfect experience, and you can only simulate so much of a show before you need to start bringing in real props. The elves all laughed, knowing what the average forest trickster was like. They were obsessive about their illusions, and if there was any sort of flaw, they would fly into a rage until it was fixed. So yes, there was a chance that one would learn an actual trade skill just to make the elves and their illusions feel more realistic to the people trapped inside. Opal could do so much more than that, especially with reality warp. But they didn't need even more things to stress out about. Not when Carl could tell that Kara was done with her ice cream, and she had taken the Berserker on a trip around town. Find me a Dreamcloth weaving skill book for Opal. It's got bonuses to illusions and aura. Just make sure you pay for it. We don't need to make the locals upset with us. Kara laughed at Carl's concern. She was currently in the market's open-air shop section, where the locals were raising an invasion team to investigate the rumors of slaveholders in a pocket dimension hiding somewhere in orbit of their star. They had already caused plenty of trouble and chaos here. She could do something responsible for a few minutes, especially to help Opal's shows. The Badger and the Fae were often on board with each other's pranks. So, a little something that would keep Ray happy while improving Opal's illusions would be a double win. Even if it wasn't using the cloth, knowing how to make it would help improve the realism of her illusions. The more realistic, the harder they were to break. Plus, if she had skills for making clothing, she wouldn't have to rely on Ray to make cute things to decorate her new elves with. Carl was good enough to send her 3 of them, and she had to resort to asking someone else to lend them clothes, since Sister Ray was away and out of range. That was just unacceptable. Kara dragged the Berserker into a stand with both bolts of cloth and a few books. That looked promising. Hello. My sister is looking for an introduction to Dreamcloth weaving, the skill book. Do you know where I can find one? Does she have a master? Kara nodded happily. But our guild's master weaver is a spider silk specialist, so she can't teach a young Fae how to weave Dreamcloth. The basics of fashion and cloth making aren't an issue, it's the specifics of Dreamcloth. Well, that's not an issue. We can sell you a copy of the skill book. They're not rare, it's just that finding an apprentice with the talent is so rare. Kara patted the elf gently. Don't worry, one day you will find a true apprentice. Unfortunately, I can't let you steal Sister Opal away from us. But if I do find a promising elf or Fae, I can recommend you. We can't hoard all the specialists for ourselves, right? The weaver laughed. Oh, you very much can. Isn't that what every crafting guild does? Just gathers every potential asset that they can, so nobody else can usurp their market share. Kara sighed. They're missing out. The true path is to train up the apprentices until they're ready to go see the world on their own, and have them spread the good word of your skills. The whole world must know of the benevolence of the Chaos Badgers, as well as the plethora of skills that our allies can provide. The weaver laughed. I never thought I would hear those words in that particular order. Tell you what, you buy a bolt of cloth, and I will toss in the book for free. Chapter 1907. Bribes. By the time that Carl had enough clothing options to satisfy Ray, the shop staff was exhausted, and the illusionary copy of Dana that Carl had created was starting to give him an annoyed look that reminded him entirely too much of the real Dana when he indulged the beasts too much. All right, Let's release your berserker friend from his escort duties, and then we can go to the restaurant. We should arrive there right about the proper time for our meeting. You know where it is? The mage asked, shocked. I can sense one place up in a massive tree near the center of town that is using supreme ranked magic in the kitchen. My guess is that is where we're going, since everyone made such a fuss about it. The guards following them chuckled as the fox guessed correctly that only one restaurant in town would have supreme rank chefs. Even a city as wealthy as theirs couldn't sustain more than one. Kara came to meet them, as she had obtained all the interesting loot and had managed to subtly tweak the future of a few young elves. Giving lucky coins to toddlers was definitely going to keep someone's life interesting. You never knew what a toddler was going to wish for. Plus, they appreciated her cupcakes far more than others. They would even fight their parents when the older elves tried to take the treats away, and a toddler's grip was surprisingly strong when they wanted something. All right, are we all done? Carl asked the badger, who was moving faster than he expected her to, if she hadn't just done something that was guaranteed to get her in trouble. Yep, all finished. I got all the things. Then, she vanished back into her space, and the berserker began to cuss. Damn it, I just brought her back. Where did she vanish off to now? I don't even sense her this time. Carl placed a hand on his shoulder. This one's not on you. She's in a separate space now, resting. She won't be any more trouble today, so you don't need to panic. Easy for you to say. I was seen standing next to her, and who knows how many people have realized the trouble that she caused. Did you know that she actually dared to interfere with a young elf's magical awakening? Carl frowned. What did she do? That's just it, nobody knows. Kara was laughing hysterically in her space, and Carl realized that she had cast random eyes on someone who was just beginning to awaken their system. Honestly, the elf was lucky that they came out the same species and gender. Well, Carl assumed that they did, or people would be panicking way more than they were right now. In that case, it couldn't be too bad. She has a skill to improve the luck of people, so she likely just blessed them. A bit of badger luck when they're awakening the system could lead to a way more interesting class than whatever they were likely to get before. And what of their planned apprenticeship? It might still be viable? Carl clearly didn't understand the elven way of following a set path so that they could fully master a specific set of skills to perfectly fill a particular role. Changing to some rare or random class would cause 1,000 years of social disorder for the young one, unless they could get their class sorted out. While Carl didn't know, Kara never bothered to ask. Never mind, we can deal with that later. If they awaken some strange class, they might end up as a wanderer or a hunter. That's still a valid life path for most. I don't know if the badger's actions will have deliberately negative outcomes, but the system normally optimizes classes to what the person is suited to. But for now, we need to get to the dinner, since you volunteered me to come with you. Don't play innocent. You're looking forward to seeing what the food there is like. The berserker smiled. If you don't want to go, I can chaperone him. Oh, shut it. Let's get a move on, or we're going to be late by the time that we get through the rituals with the door host. There is a ritual? I should have prepared notes in advance. It's more of a cultural thing. If they don't think that you're worthy, they will make it hard for you to enter the restaurant, even if you have a reservation. Carl nodded. Oh, it's like that. I knew that the elves had a big thing for social structure, so I really should have expected that. All right, it's not a problem. I know how to deal with stuffy noblemen. Both elves seriously doubted that was true, but there was no way to argue with Carl, who was already leading the way to the restaurant, nimbly hopping between platforms and skipping the stairs. Most of the young elves did the same thing, but Carl seemed to float in the air. For a moment, those watching were enchanted by his agility. Then they began to realize that it wasn't pure physical skill. The fox could fly. That was not an ability that they gained from their system as they advanced. He was wearing the robes of one on the path of magic, as expected of a divine fox. The species was naturally magically adept, after all. So, they shouldn't have been surprised, but seeing the fox dart gracefully between tree walkway platforms in the forest city was still quite the unusual event. Especially when he had a whole retinue of guards chasing him. Only when he reached the door of the restaurant did he slow and straighten his clothes, then ensure that his hair was perfect before approaching the host. Carl let about a third of his fox charm slip as he smiled at the host and slipped a hastily enchanted ring of agility at the epic grade into the host's hand. Kind host, I've been invited by the mistress of these fine guards. Would it be possible to have wine brought to mentally prepare myself for the evening's more serious topics? The host smiled back and transferred the ring into his inventory. This was a fox that knew the art of the bribe very well. If he turned Carl down now, with the fox charm active at that strength, he would look like a heartless bully. The guest was in epic dreamcloth, perfectly groomed, and wearing peerless grade accessories. Even if he wasn't an elf, he was clearly a man of great means and could afford to dine here on his own tab, even with guests. Chapter 1908. Silverwood Prestige. Of course, good sir. Is this gentleman with your party? My chaperone. As I am meeting an unfamiliar young lady, it is only right to protect her reputation with a third party in attendance. The host smiled faintly, while the guests who could hear the conversation had to struggle not to laugh. The fox wasn't concerned about his own safety, but about the reputation of the lady he was meeting. Was he actually being courted by a young elven princess? The scandal that would cause if she was alone in a private dining room with a divine fox would last for decades. And they were all fully invested in seeing it play out. Then the host spoke. You must be waiting for the Lady Silverwood. She arrived just moments ago. Please do follow me this way. The person he was meeting was not a debutante with a deep appreciation for fluffy tales, but the Lady Silverwood, a 10 millennia old widow and family head? That was even more entertaining, even if the level of scandal was non-existent. Nobody would dare tell her to her face that she had done anything inappropriate with a divine fox. But the speculation that she was arranging a consort for one of her younger family members would abound. The mage with Carl didn't see it the same way. The notion that a noble elf would marry a granddaughter or great-granddaughter off to a divine fox, instead of another noble, was scandalous enough. The fox would naturally be immune to such scandal, as nobody had expected him to be anything but a fluffy-eared incubus. It didn't help that Carl had let both halves of his aura slip, the natural predatory one and fox charm. The effects compounded each other, and the elves didn't dare to even try to sneak a touch when his tails brushed against their chairs. Except, the mage was beginning to suspect that Carl was actually brushing people with his tails on purpose. They were going to need that wine. Carl entered the private dining room with a flourish and found that not only was the Lady Silverwood there, she had brought children. Carl gracefully joined them at the low table, sitting cross-legged on a cushion with his tails spread out behind him. Lady Silverwood, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for inviting me to such a lovely establishment on my first day in town. The hospitality of the elves truly lives up to its legendary reputation. The ancient druid shook her head in dismay. I had heard that you were fearless, but I didn't dare to believe it. Welcome, Lord Carl, to the Ancient Oak Restaurant. Tell me, did you enjoy your trip to our local dungeon? I heard a most curious thing about your trip there. Oh, it was highly enjoyable. Carl replied, pulling all his aura back and muting Fox charm, now that they were seated, and he didn't need to put on a show. I have a rather unique affinity for dungeons as an avatar of the world dragon, and this one was no disappointment, given that it is aligned with the Titan gods. We didn't get the maximum benefit of it, as my group is a bit chaotic, and the effect can be random. But it was more than enough to provide us with resources worth the entry fee. So, I am told. You see, one of your group members is a retainer of my family, and he relayed the events as they happened. Something about hundreds of golems and a small army of epic dryads. I am willing to pay a handsome price for the knowledge behind that ability. Now Carl understood. She was a supreme-ranked druid, never advanced in her class. And she was looking for a way to push her power progress further than she had managed. If his guess was right, she had likely peaked and stagnated centuries ago. But Carl wasn't an expert in elven ages, as forming your immortal spirit let you lock your age in place, or alter your external appearance to some degree. If she had the potential to become a family head, she would have done that when she was still a young elf, so her appearance had nothing to do with her actual age. Carl frowned, not intending to cause offense, but I'm not certain that you were informed of the full extent of the situation. You see, the skill that summons the Dryad Queens is not a simple one. It's a peerless grade skill with extremely tight restrictions. The younger elves paled at the comment. Peerless grade skills only existed in theory. There were a few reputed to exist in the royal family's archives. But nobody outside of a fairy tale had ever actually used one. They had assumed that it was an army-type golem summoning skill, and that the ability to make them epic grade was from his class, or an illusion. So, you're saying that you know a peerless grade skill? The matriarch asked dubiously. Not wanting to argue the point, Carl simply summoned one of the dryads with Army of Nature's Vengeance. See for yourself. This is the Lady Silverwood. She's not an enemy. The dryad bowed to Carl and then shook her branches happily as the flood of nature magic from the elven city settled over her body. This place was like home to her species, incredibly comfortable. It really is an epic grade dryad queen. Tell me, how realistic is it? The dryad answered for Carl. Lady Silverwood, I possess all the innate magic and mental capacity of my kind. The spell that called me here did not diminish me in any way. The elf looked shocked, and the mage saw a cunning smile cross Carl's face. He was definitely going to milk this situation for an immense amount of wealth. There was no way that smile said anything positive for the treasury of the Silverwood family. But if they could get the skill, wouldn't that put them next to royalty and prestige? Chapter 1909. The Cost. I can't deny that skill is indeed peerless. Now, what do you want to teach it to my family? Lady Silverwood demanded. Not to you personally, but to your family as a whole? The ancient druid immediately saw the distinction that Carl was drawing. Getting the skill for herself would be expensive, but he might consider a discount, given her status. But giving the skill to her family meant a method that could be learned more than one time. And if they could learn it more than once, the skill would spread through the family, and they would gain a massive advantage for the Silverwood legacy. That was not something that would be passed down without both close ties and a significant concession. However, the Lady Silverwood was a practical woman. If she knew the skill herself, she could slowly find a way to teach the most talented of her prodigies and successors. That was a normal event for the elves of the immortal worlds. They had the dedication to study and plenty of time as they grew up. I will settle for the skill to be transferred to myself, and I will find my own method of granting it to my successor. If that's the case, then all I will ask for is an equivalent exchange, given your centuries of distinguished reputation. Carl agreed. The mage sitting beside him went a bit pale. He was fairly certain that Carl had no idea who the Lady Silverwood was, but simply agreeing that you would not try to mark up the price for her was considered a concession on his part. The ancient elf examined his wrists and frowned. All those accessories were peerless grade immortal items, and they were all made by Carl himself. It simply wouldn't be possible to bribe him with priceless treasures unless she dug into the supreme ranked and legendary items that her family had collected. The supreme ranked likely wouldn't work either, as he was a branch leader, according to her examination of him, which meant that someone more powerful than him was the guild leader. If Carl could make peerless grade immortal items, the guild leader had to at least be a strong supreme, or they would have lost their status to him already. It wouldn't be hard for a fox to steal someone's spot if they put their mind to charming their guild members. The problem was that if she gave away one of the few legendary treasures that she had, it would be questionable as to whether it was worth as much as a peerless grade skill. She also couldn't try to bribe him into the family with a marriage alliance. She could sense the soul bond, so even suggesting it would offend Carl. In short, his refusal to outright name a price was putting her in a tight spot. If there was something specific that Carl wanted, she would find a way to get it. But he didn't seem to be lacking anything. Perhaps she could offer him something incredibly rare, and only of value to a pet sitter? There should be something like that in the Elven Forest. If she knew what his bonded beasts were, she would have a better idea of what sort of specialty he had. But she could also try to offer him a different sort of divine beast. It might not suit him, but it might be suitable for his disciple. A divine beast's loyalty was every bit as valuable as a peerless grade skill, if you could manage to obtain it, and a pet sitter could do that. Most of the time. During the long seconds while she remained silent, trying to determine the best response, Carl sipped elven wine and pretended that he couldn't see the sweat rolling down the face of the mage next to him. Then, An odd two-tailed cat leapt through the window to rub up against the Dryad Queen. That brought Carl's attention to the number of beasts outside who were drawn to the nature elemental construct. Dryad queens were not quite on the level of a forest lord or other king of the forest type divine beast, but they were known to be gentle to the creatures, and their healing magic made them feel naturally friendly. The forest cat said its hello to the Dryad Queen, then came to curl up in Carl's lap, startling both the elves and the serving staff. That was a wild beast, not someone's pet. But it had just decided that Carl was a spot for a nap. Carl idly stroked the incredibly soft fur, and then offered the cat a bit of pastry, which the cat turned its nose up at. The elven food was normally all vegan, and the cat did not eat plants of any sort. At least not willingly. That affinity for beasts was enough to make up her mind, and Lady Silverwood sent one of her trusted retainers to speak to an old friend of hers. If she could send one of the young ones with Carl, she would happily guarantee to protect that one's territory using the skill that she traded, and she could guarantee a good life for the little one. A pet sitter would not harm one of their charges. It was anathema to them. Mistress, the forest lord agrees. She says that she doesn't fully trust the ancients, but if they're willing to help raise the runt of her litter to its potential, she will owe them a debt of gratitude. That was good enough for the Lady Silverwood. Lord Carl, how would you feel about an exchange? I have the young offspring of a forest lord, a divine beast, who could be exchanged for your peerless grade skill. Kara, what is a forest lord? Kara laughed. It's a title, a job class for powerful druids and nature beasts. I think this one is a deer, maybe an antelope. It looks funny, and I think it's got wings. Chapter 1910. White-winged. Carl wasn't sure what to make of that. A deer, Pegasus hybrid? Some sort of fey monster? If it could get a forest lord title, it had to be powerful in lineage. What do you think? Carl asked the group. It's better than giving up the spell for far too cheap. Though, she's almost certainly trying to scam you. Ray replied. If I can't have pet elves, that's the next best thing. Bring back the Fey sister. Opal agreed. You've got elves at home. Quite a few of them, actually. But those are old elves, I want new elves. Is this your rebellious phase? That made Dana laugh. The problem was not that they were physically old, as there were young ones here, both from the very first group they brought in and rescued from the slavers. The problem was that they were all aware that Opal liked to play illusionary pranks on them, and the new arrivals weren't gullible enough for her liking. At least Leo still played along with her games. Carl smiled at the Lady Silverwood. If you can get the divine beast to come here and meet me of its own free will, I will consider the trade. That might not be easy, but if she could get the forest lord to cooperate. Please just wait a moment. By the time that the meal is finished, they should have arrived. The servers brought out the food, and the mage beside Carl sighed happily at the mere scent of it. Their cooking magic level was definitely higher here than anything that Lotus had managed to produce at home, and he was looking forward to seeing what the others could do with the new cookbooks and information they had received. There was some sort of mushroom sauce with what Carl had almost taken for steak slices. It was amazing, but the steak was mushrooms of some sort. The residents of the tiny world would love to know the recipe for this, or at least how to get the ingredients. If they could grow the unique mushrooms, they could find a way to work out the recipe. But they did have a few types already, so they might figure out a workable version on their own, now that they had the cookbooks. The courses came out one after another, constantly keeping the table filled with unique fey foods. They were just receiving bowls of sweet pudding when a small white creature stumbled into the room on wobbly legs. It looked like a snow-white deer to Carl, but he could see that it really did have wings. It wasn't a Pegasus, as it wasn't a horse, but it did have hooves and no sign of chimeric features, other than the white feathered wings. Curious. The cat reluctantly backed out of Carl's lap and went to sit on the windowsill as the little white deer approached. Well, hello, little one. Are you the child of the forest lord that Lady Silverwood mentioned? The little deer straightened its legs and nodded enthusiastically. Can you speak? I understand most languages. The little deer giggled and smiled at the Dryad Queen, who waved back. I speak Fey Beast and Dryad. Do you speak those? Carl nodded. In fact, I understand almost all the beast languages, but I've gotten pretty good at Dryad as well. he replied in the beast tongue, and the little deer got excited, while the elves looked confused. They didn't speak whatever it was that Carl and the Forest Lord's child were using. Beast masters speak all the beast languages. It's a system thing, Carl explained, then turned back to the little winged deer. What is it that they call your species? And what sort of abilities do you have that you would like me to help you with? The little deer thought about it. I want to learn to summon dryads too. That was only about a third of the answer, but the little one was already distracted by the presence of the dryad and not focusing. It's a deer hatchling. Leo laughed as he realized what was happening. Like the dragons and their wings, it was still working on stabilizing its legs. Given a little bit of practice and some growth, it should be a majestic little beast. Would you like to come with me? The elves wished to trade me for the spell to make the Dryad Queens. If you freely agree to go with me, then we can settle this pact. The little one nodded. Mom said that I should agree to go because you can help me catch up to my siblings. If you can make me strong, I want to go. That was good enough for Carl. All right, I will grant you the skill. Place your hand on this orb, and the transfer will activate. The stone was nothing but a standard nature elemental stone, a prop to cover for the fact that Carl was going to use Follow Me, Little One, to transfer the knowledge to the Lady Silverwood. Pet sitter Carl offers knowledge. The peerless skill, Army of Nature's Vengeance, will be transferred to the sly elf Muriel Silverwood. The lady looked shocked as the details of the spell entered her mind, and she completely missed the moment when the little deer vanished. Beast space adjusting, new pet bonded. Warning, juvenile forest lord is currently suffering from a supreme ranked curse. Estimated time to cure, 48 hours. Kara glared at the notification as if it had personally offended her. 2 days for the space to cure a supreme ranked curse? She could do so much better than that. Just spam, nullify, until it worked. Perhaps upcast it a bit with Carl's amulet. That should be more than enough. The little white creature looked shocked as the badger began to bombard her with magic for no apparent reason. Then, power began to flow into her body, and strength entered her legs for the first time in her life, and mana flooded her storage, which had previously been completely dry. Yes, this was what a young forest lord should feel like, Kara decided. If the new sibling was too weak, they wouldn't be fun to play with.